In Palestine, figure shows that Israel invested nearly 10% of its GDP in the ongoing military campaign against Gaza, resulting in the death of more than 4,000 Palestinian children. The UN Security Council failed once more to reach agreements to end Israel's relentless bombings of Gaza. And in Havana, Cuban and Chinese parliamentarians and political leaders further deepened and consolidated their historic relations. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Israel has invested nearly 10% of its gross domestic product in a military campaign that has resulted in the death of more than 4,000 Palestinian children. The Ministry of Finance's figure contemplates an investment of 200 billion shekels, which is equivalent to about 51 billion US dollars. According to the national media, the money to finance the war does not exist, and raising it from national or international markets will face complications. Additionally, an investigation carried out by a British media specialized in finance point out that Israeli companies after the outbreak of the war are operating at 20% or less of their capacity, and they add that 1 out of every 3 has closed down. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Monday a new occupation in Gaza and says it will be for an indefinite period of time. Although the main Israeli ally in the West, the Biden administration, assures that it does not support an occupation in Palestine, the Israeli Prime Minister declared that his country will assume overall responsibility for the security of Gaza for an undetermined period after the end of its war with Hamas. In the meantime, the White House said that U.S. President Joe Biden and the Israeli Prime Minister discussed on Monday the possibility of tactical pauses in the war to allow civilians to flee and enable humanitarian aid and the possible release of hostages. However, Netanyahu ratified that there will be no ceasefire except for small tactical pauses.
Gaza does not want to continue on the path of Hamas. I believe that Israel will have for an indefinite period of time the security responsibility, because we have seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have the security responsibility, what we have is the erosion of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't have imagined.
On Tuesday, the Gaza Strip government press office published one of the most devastating reports of this first month of Israeli aggression. 30,000 tons of explosives have been dropped by Israel on the enclave. According to the authorities' estimates, this is the equivalent of 82 tons per square kilometer, which translates into even more chilling numbers. Every 6 hours, children die in Gaza, and every hour, 5 women die as well. Hospitals, 62% of which are out of service, receive 1 wounded person every minute and 15 corpses every hour. 70% of the population of the Strip lives on the streets. If the war ended today, 50% of the people in Gaza would have to repair their homes, and 10% of the population would no longer have a house to return to. The UN Security Council failed once more to reach agreements to end Israel's relentless bombings of Gaza. Since the beginning of the conflict, 4 drafts have been presented to the Security Council. All of them failed. The 15 members also failed to reach an agreement in the session convened by China and the United Arab Emirates on Monday behind closed doors. To date, more than 10,000 Palestinians have died in Israeli shellings. At the end of the council, the Chinese ambassador Sang Jun and the Emirati ambassador Lana Saki issued a joint statement in which they called for an urgent humanitarian ceasefire and recalled that wars have laws. On Monday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Palestine conflict, as he warned that the bombardment of Gaza Strip was becoming a graveyard for children.
Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children. Hundreds of girls and boys are reportedly being killed or injured every day. More journalists have reportedly been killed over a 4-week period than in any conflict in at least 3 decades. More United Nations aid workers have been killed than in any comparable period in the history of our organization. I salute all those who continue their life-saving work despite the overwhelming challenges and risks. Nothing can justify the deliberate torture, killing, injuring, and kidnapping of civilians. The protection of civilians must be paramount. I'm deeply concerned about clear violations of international humanitarian law that we are witnessing. Let me be clear. No party to an armed conflict is above international humanitarian law.
Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh cried while reviewing the conditions of the people in Gaza during his opening speech at the Palestinian cabinet meeting on Tuesday in the West Bank city of Ramallah.
Children write their names on their bodies so that their bodies can be identified. The mother of the 3 children who were buried under the rubble tells her children, "Let me see you, even in a dream." Thousands of children are losing their lives, and in the world they are preparing to celebrate International Children's Day. I call on the United Nations to cancel this celebration and publish pictures of the Palestinian children who were absent from their schools and kindergartens due to the Israeli killing machine.
The Palestinian Prime Minister also referred to the comments by the Israeli Minister of Jerusalem and Heritage Affairs, Amihai Eliyahu, who said on Sunday that dropping a nuclear weapon on the Gaza Strip is an option.
The Israeli Minister of Heritage was not satisfied with 10,000 martyrs, more than 25,000 wounded, and 1 million displaced people. He wanted to see Hiroshima in Gaza. He wanted to see genocide accomplished with the nuclear bombs Israel possesses. This bloodthirsty person wants to kill for the purpose of killing.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, described as historic the beginning of the electoral campaign for the consultative referendum in defense of Guyana Essequiba to be held on December 3rd. In this context, the head of state called on citizens of all political sectors to participate in the referendum and to attend the electoral simulation on November 19th. This while denouncing the intentions of a sector of the opposition parties and factors related to ExxonMobil to position the referendum on quotas as a partisan issue. The Venezuelan president affirmed that the campaign must be a pedagogical and inclusive process so that the Venezuelan people may know the conditions of the dispossession and the historical rights of the country over the territory in claim.
Today, Monday, has officially started. According to the Electoral Powers Schedule, the pedagogical, instructive, mobilizing, joyful, and inclusive electoral campaign for the historic referendum of Sunday, December 3, 2023. Historic referendum. Here we go. Moving forward, step by step. Everyone, all together.
Likewise, the Venezuelan president urged the population to participate in the electoral exercise to be held on November 19th.
It is a reliable, complete electoral system, the best electoral system in the world. And next Sunday, wherever you go, I hope they will inform you where those voting centers will be, so that you can go out to the simulated election, preparing for the great historical referendum, the only one in the history of Venezuela, on the Guyana Essequiba. The democratic people are experts in elections and will demonstrate it now, next Sunday 19 and on December 3.
In addition, the Venezuelan head of state reaffirmed that the siege of the Israeli army against the Gaza Strip must be stopped in order to avoid further shedding of innocent blood.
Now the racists and supremacists of Zionism today want to finish with the Palestinian people, and I say more, they want to finish with all the Arab people, with all the Muslim people. They have sown an ideology of hatred, of racism. They have sown it for 75 years with the support of the West. Attention, good world that listens to me. Pay attention, men and women of the United States, of Europe, and of the world. They have sown an ideology more dangerous than the Nazi ideology, first against the Palestinian people. Race, extermination, genocide, atomic bombs, and then against the life of all Arab peoples, all Muslim peoples. And then they will want to come for us, Christians, Catholics. Let's stop in time the genocide. Let's stop in time the Zionist genocide against the beloved Palestinian people.
In Cuba, President Miguel Díaz-Canel attended the inauguration of the 39th edition of the International Fair of Havana. The Cuban president presided over the inauguration of the event, which is attended by representatives from more than 60 countries and 1,800 companies. The purpose of the fair is to strengthen financial and cooperation ties with a view to expanding Cuba's export markets. Finally, the Cuban president affirmed that a fair of this magnitude ratifies the support of international businessmen and governments to the people of Cuba. Panama's teachers' unions warned the government that they will not comply with the call to return to schools and that they will remain in the streets until the mining contract with the foreign company is repealed. The teachers have held several meetings to inform about the next mobilizations and the steps to follow to demand the repeal of the controversial contract law signed by the state with the Canadian mining company Quantum Minerals. Gathering the platform Alliance of People United for Life, they informed that they will appeal to the President of the Republic, Laurentino Cortizo, to call an extraordinary meeting of the National Assembly, which is currently in recess.
Parents, students, and of course to all teachers nationwide, we want to announce today that the teachers' union throughout the country and simultaneously we want to state that we remain firm in the finite strike that was announced days ago.
On Monday, at least 14 people died in a fire at the Cerro Obligado in the Biobío region in southern Chile. It happened in the commune of Coronel, inside a house where there were 8 adults and 6 minors, all of Venezuelan nationality. Firefighting units arrived at the place to contain the flames, but it was not possible to save the lives of the people inside. According to what was reported, the house had only one exit and one window and could be being used as an informal daycare center. The regional authorities assured that while the causes of the fire are being investigated, they have contacted the relatives and are managing humanitarian aid. On Monday, an earthquake of magnitude 5.2 with epicenter in the town of Mana in the center of Ecuador shook several cities, including Quito, the capital city. The telluric movement was registered at 22:33 local time and occurred at a depth of 21 kilometers, according to the Geophysical Institute. Residents of the highlands, Riobamba, Quito, and other 13 provinces of the country assured through social media their houses shook strongly. The Secretary of Risk confirmed the occurrence without issuing any report on victims, injured, or damage of consideration. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Cuban and Chinese parliamentarians and political leaders have further deepened and consolidated their historic relations. On Monday, Ana Maria Mari Machado, Vice President of the National Assembly of People's Power and the Council of State of Cuba, held a meeting with Shi Tai-fen, member of the Political Bureau and the Secretariat of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, in the Baragua Hall of the National Capitol in Havana, the capital of Cuba. The meeting served to further consolidate the strategic nature of the relations between the two countries. The Cuban parliamentarian highlighted the importance of deepening friendly ties for the development of strategic programs. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with South African Deputy President Paul Mashatile in Beijing on Monday, noting that this year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and South Africa. Xi said that the bilateral relations has entered a golden era. Xi recalled his fourth state visit to South Africa in August this year, during which he and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa agreed that the two countries should be strategic partners of high-level mutual trust. Development partners making progress together, friendly partners enjoying mutual understanding, and global partners with a commitment to justice. She stated that China is ready to work with South Africa to continuously enrich the contents of the China-South Africa Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and push bilateral relations to a new level.
In August this year, I paid my fourth state visit to South Africa and was warmly received by the South African government. The memories of that visit remain vivid in my mind. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and South Africa, and the bilateral relationship has entered a golden era. China is willing to work with South Africa to continuously enrich the content of the China-South Africa Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and push bilateral relations to a new level.
Your Excellency, I bring warm and revolutionary greetings from His Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa. We thank you for accepting the highest order bestowed by His Excellency President Ramaphosa. This honor for us signifies your contribution to people and party to party, as well as economic relations. We thank you for making us a guest of honor at the Expo, from which we hope to strengthen economic and trade ties further.
The head of the UN peace operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, said the outbreak of armed conflict in Sudan in April interrupted the encouraging signs of dialogue between Sudan and South Sudan and effectively put on hold the political process with regard to the final status of ABA and border issues.
Outbreak of armed conflict in the Sudan in April interrupted the encouraging signs of dialogue between the Sudan and South Sudan witnessed earlier in 2023. It effectively put on hold the political process with regard to the final status of ABA and border issues. In ABA, the Sudan crisis has resulted in an influx of displaced people. At Amiet Market, our humanitarian partners have recorded over 9,000 people who have sought refuge from the fighting. The mission has already seen increased weapons circulation in ABA, a situation that may have been exacerbated by the situation in the Sudan. The conflict has also created economic hardship for the population of ABA, as the flow of basic goods and commodities, many of which came from the north, has been disrupted. UNISFA, too, has had to adjust its deployment routes and supply arrangements in line with the new reality.
The Special Envoy of the Secretary General for the Horn of Africa, Hannah Serewa Tete, also addressed the Council.
Indeed, in addition to thousands of Sudanese fleeing the conflict, more than 353,000 registered returnees and refugees from Sudan have crossed into South Sudan, in a country where 2/3 of the population is already in need of humanitarian assistance. With the military developments in Sudan and most recently, the RSF seizure of Belila Airport and Belila's oil field, the military confrontation between the SAF and RSF is getting closer to the boundary with Abyei, and the border with South Sudan.
UN peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo announced a joint operation with the National Army Friday designed to stop M23 rebels from capturing key eastern cities. The announcement comes after a surge in fighting with the M23 group since last month, which has forced 200,000 people to flee their homes. According to the UN, following a period of relative calm, it also comes after the Congolese government called for the departure of the unpopular UN peacekeeping force known as MONUSCO. Speaking to reporters in the eastern city of Goma, MONUSCO Commander General Otavio Rodriguez de Miranda Filo said the recent escalation was very worrying. MONUSCO is one of the largest and most expensive UN peacekeeping missions in the world, with an annual budget of about $1 billion. The Congolese government has called for an accelerated exit from MONUSCO starting in December. We have come to the end of this news brief. Before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social medias on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.